What's happening?
We're adequate.
We're adequate. Just adequate.
This episode, that's the title. This episode is just adequate.
Just adequate. We're doing what we can.
The bare minimum.
Yeah, we'll do everything possible as best we can. And
it's okay.
It's gonna be
It's okay if we don't hit the mark.
It's gonna be okay.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Hey Paola.
Hey Padre.
All right, so we got to go on retreat this past week.
What kind of retreat? That was intense.
A brief retreat, but intense. Yes.
Brief could have been a whole week.
I think, yeah, there's probably a lot there that could have been unpacked over the course of several days, which is great when you can actually do it in such a condensed period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been thinking about it since then.
Me too.
And we kind of started with this question of, what do you dream?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the dreams? And I realized in being asked the question that I had no ready answer. I had no answer ready to go. And that was very striking. I don't know. Did you have an answer ready to go? And we're not talking about sleeping dreams.
I understand.
Right? The dreams
yes.
of when you sleep. It was the sort of what are your dreams in terms of
Life.
What do you look forward to, hope for? What do you want to do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you wish you could do?
Mm-hmm.
That was the dream question.
Yeah, like what do you dream in 1 year, 5 year? What's your legacy?
Yeah, and not so much a plan. Like
yeah.
have you set up the plan, but just what's the dream? And I didn't have a ready answer.
So I had a very different answer. I didn't have a dream that I necessarily said that I hope for this to happen. I mentioned how I feel like I've lost my ability to dream.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing.
Like, so the only thing that came up, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast, like the only thought that I had was my ability to just look into the clouds and like imagine things again. Like, I just felt a deep sadness for that.
That one looks like a cloud.
No, that one looks like a dragon or a raccoon or like just like
cumulonimbus.
Whatever. But this lightheartedness about life. That's really what that meant for me. And there was a deep sadness about that. But I didn't connect it until later in the retreat. Why did I give that answer? And it had to do with, as they're asking us questions about our life and like the trauma and like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on here. You've unveiled too much. It's like there was a wall that was there and someone decided to poke at it. Now the water's coming out. I'm like, we can't stop the
water's
flood.
coming out. Oh no, what is this stuff coming from my eyes?
So I think I realized the reason why I picked that I'm sad that I do not dream anymore is because I have a loss of childhood. Like I had to personally grow up very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
In my family story, in my origin of family, or like my
origin story.
Origin story.
You're a Marvel superhero. Your origin story is very important.
And I didn't realize that until like a couple hours later. And
that you're a Marvel superhero?
No.
Or that you have an origin story?
That I have an origin story. I know I have an origin story. So yeah, my family of origin, all of that, and just kind of thinking like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, like I want to know what it's like to be a kid. And then how does that play into my spiritual life is this week, that retreat triggered a lot. I was like, dang it, now I'm going to be crying every day.
Well, we don't need to do that on the podcast.
We don't have to do it on the podcast.
You do that enough on the podcast.
No, I don't. I don't. For you, maybe. But maybe for the listeners, I probably do not. I could be more in touch with my emotions. But
this is practically the Sister Miriam James podcast, the way you cry.
Yeah, but I don't cry at every episode. That's what she does. That's what they do.
They do, sure.
I'm like once in a while. But no, that's just my point. It's just it was a very wonderful retreat, but it made me have to engage a part of me that I thought was significantly kind of healed, and then clearly it's not. And
do you think that it's not healed, or that it's
there's layers?
There's still something else to identify and recognize. Like some of the healing has happened, but now there's this other part of, now that you've healed, we build up again. So almost like physical therapy.
Yeah.
You've healed from the injury. Now it's time to rebuild some of the skills that are needed.
No, I think I think part of it is we're gonna have to go back to that wound, open it up again a little bit, because some of it has healed improperly.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what I felt was coming. Like, I thought parts of me had like, okay, we did the work, we went through those wounds, and but there's other parts of that wound that did not seal correctly.
Gotcha. Okay.
And how I see that playing out in my life is the temptation to overachieve, self-sufficiency. How am I like this in prayer? Well, I can't depend on God for this stuff. I have a fear that I have to still depend on myself at the end of my life. So yeah, the questionnaire was intense too.
It was.
That was very triggering in a very good way, but it really, to see the whole of my life. And to see the
right, because the purpose of it is to say here are key questions that we need to be aware of. Here are things going on that we need to be alert to, and being alert to them and being aware of them allows us then to kind of figure out what needs to be addressed. What's the stuff that's going on that we don't even realize is happening? And as you kind of work on that, so for me that question of the dreams was like you. I was feeling like I don't know if I dream anymore. I don't know if I'm doing that, and I'm not entirely comfortable with the notion, actually. Right. And for me, part of it was looking at it and discovering that I've sort of fallen into the routine, and not in a negative way of falling into the routine, but in the sense that the routine of life, of parish life, and all these things, it requires certain things, and I know what I have to do. But am I thinking outside of that box and the things that need to get done for the bigger picture? Or am I too focused on the immediate stuff? And it got me thinking about how I focus a lot on the daily responsibilities, the things that I have to do right now. And I don't always think so much about the bigger stuff. And it reminded me that I just done on The Tangent, which is my other podcast, The Tangent, available on Veritas Catholic Network.
A celebrity.
Yeah. Fridays at 12:30 on 1350 AM and 103.9 FM on the Veritas Catholic Network app, wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube at the Tangent, or on the Instagram at @the_Tangent_Catholic. So these are all possibilities, right, of the ways you can follow The Tangent and listen to it. It's it's great. Me and my former student Matt Sparazza, it's a lot of fun. Anyway,
that's awesome.
He wasn't available for an episode, so I just recorded one solo, and it was about discernment. And I realized that discernment is something I don't always do. And that was on my mind as I did the podcast, that discerning what God wants, trying to figure out what am I supposed to do next? What is God's plan? What is God's will for me? It's not always something that I really think too much about, because I already discerned my vocation. I became a priest. I know what I'm supposed to do. I am supposed to be a priest. Okay, good. I can kind of brush my hands. Oh, wait, we can do the ASMR thing. Yeah, see, I knew you'd like that. I knew you'd appreciate that.
Like how I laughed outside.
Yes, way to laugh away from your microphone.
That's funny. And I covered my mouth too.
Paola's trumpet-like laugh is causing problems for our sound system and our audio engineer. It's great. I love it. So anyway, coming back to this.
Yeah.
The dream thing, connected to discernment, connected to vocation. I realized I kind of, in a certain way, stopped really discerning beyond what I already know I'm supposed to do. But the thing is that discernment applies not only to the vocation. So it is necessary, it's important to discern your vocation. I had to discern that I was called to the priesthood. When people are called to marriage, how do they discern their vocation to marriage? Well, they discern their vocation to marriage by dating. You date someone and you realize, I love this person, I want to spend the rest of my life with them. Or you realize, I don't love this person and I don't want to spend the rest of my life with them, and then you don't marry them, right? That's discernment. And we don't think of it necessarily explicitly in those terms that it's discernment, but it is. It's real discernment. So if I'm not discerning, I need to start introducing that into my life again. I need to reintroduce the concept of seeking out God's will in these different things. But in order to discern, I have to have something that I am trying to discern. I need to be discerning between things. So what is the thing that I'm trying to discern? discernment always applies to making a choice between things.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not thinking about what the next possibility is, that's the dream, then what am I discerning? So going on the retreat kind of brought me back to that little episode talking about discernment and made me realize that I've not identified the thing that I might like to do. So maybe there's something that I'm interested in, but I've not thought about, is this God's will for me? Maybe there's something that I'd like to do or a problem that I see that needs to be solved, but have I brought it into prayer to say, is this God what you want me to do? And have I really even given any time to it? Or do I just kind of think, oh yeah, file that away. That's a nice idea, but I don't really take it any further. So I don't engage in the dreaming. I'm not really thinking bigger picture. Okay, that's an area that I'm going to have to work on.
Yeah.
It's an area that I really think I need to work on.
This is so timely because this was my week.
Okay.
Like everything I was like, oh yeah, I understand. Now on my end, it's that I'm saying yes to too many things and I'm not taking the time to discern what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay.
So as someone said, you're like a puppy for Jesus. You just don't know when to say no. I'm like, because everything excites you. I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And I have this unrest to constantly want to do God's will, but I have a habit of doing too much that it leads me, there's just negative consequences to it.
Sure.
So I overwhelm myself. I sign up for too many things and then I'm like, I can't handle it. And I feel like this big pressure to try to figure out how to get it all done. So providentially, said person pulls out Searching for and Maintaining Peace by Father Jacques Philippe, and says to me, providentially, I read something and I said to myself, this is Paola. So anyways, said person read that to me.
This is Paola.
This is oh my gosh. Do you remember, did you hear at the retreat one person?
I did.
And I was like, and she said it
I was laughing
3 times in a row. She goes, what's your name? And I was like, Paola. She goes, Paola. I was like, well, how do you say it? I was like, Pa. And she goes, oh, and then La. And she goes, oh, okay, Paola. I was like, it's okay.
The way to teach Paola is going to be too difficult. So just tell them to say Pao. La.
See, that's the thing. No one's actually sure how to say my name because we've got 2 different ways to say it. But you got to make, that's like the
Paola.
Advanced version, and then this is the intermediate version.
Yeah. Paola is closer to Paola than Paola. Paola is not a name. It is slang for getting paid. It is slang for cash money. Cash money, make it rain. Okay? And that is not a human being's name.
Why would they think somebody should be called that? Or go by that name?
Well, because you're ethnic.
Yes, thank you. You clearly, my gosh, can we highlight that statement? Because you're ethnic.
Can we make that the episode title?
Yeah,
Instead of adequate, we're just going to call it You're Ethnic.
You're an adequate ethnic person.
But see, okay, we're just gonna sidebar for a second here because that is a phrase. Okay, it's actually one of my favorite Parks and Rec scenes with Ron Swanson.
That he's adequate, or
no,
he's ethnic?
Andy Dwyer suggests getting burritos, and he says, I don't normally go in for ethnic food. He says, they have one called the Meat Tornado. You had me at Meat Tornado. And that's how they decide where to eat. But the idea that a burrito is ethnic food, well, all food is ethnic. All of us are ethnic.
Yeah.
Right? The idea that somehow we're not known, that's simply not true. All of us have some sort of an ethnicity. We all come from something, from somewhere, from a culture, and we have certain characteristics that this is a reality. It's so to say you're ethnic is simply a statement of fact, but usually it would be
you're
said
ethnic too.
Exactly, I am too, but like the way I was saying was obviously to imply that I'm not and you are, right? I just simply exist. I exist from nothing. I exist with no context.
The Pepe's comment, the Frank Pepe's, and you said you're
I still can't believe you call it Frank Pepe's. Nobody calls it Frank Pepe's. It's just Pepe's. My goodness. All right, let's bring it back.
Ethnic,
read from Father Jacques Philippe, because I think who's ethnic, by the way, French ethnic. But Father Jacques Philippe, by the way, is a master spiritual writer, really incredible. And this book, Searching for and Maintaining Peace, is on my list of books that I need to read.
Okay.
So I'm glad that you're going to talk about it because this will inspire me to read it.
Oh, yeah, I went through the whole audiobook on Hallow app. So again, if you don't have the Hallow app and you haven't heard me repeat it 1,000 times, just get it.
Hallo, Hallow. Or it's just Hallo. No, it's Hallow.
Hallow. Oh,
there's a W at the end?
Yeah, Hallow.
Hallow.
Mm-hmm.
Hallow.
Hallow. All right. Unrest when we have decisions to make. The last reason that we are going to examine, and which frequently causes us to lose our sense of peace, is lack of certitude, the troubling of conscience that is experienced when it is necessary to make a decision and we are not able to see clearly. We are afraid to make a mistake that may have disturbing consequences. We are afraid that it may not be the will of the Lord. Situations of this type can be very painful and certain dilemmas truly agonizing. The general stance of abandonment and confidence of which we have spoken, this approach of putting everything into the hands of God, which enables us to avoid dramatizing anything, will be particularly precious in these situations of uncertainty. We would like, however, to make a few useful remarks for conserving our interior peace when making decisions. The first thing to say is that faced with an important decision, one of the errors to avoid is that of being excessively hurried or precipitous. A certain deliberation is often necessary in order to properly consider things and to allow our hearts to orient themselves peaceably and gently toward a good solution. St. Vincent de Paul made decisions that were presented to him after mature reflection in such a way that some people who were close to him found him too slow to decide. But one judges a tree by its fruit. Before making a decision, it is necessary to do what is appropriate to see the situation clearly and not decide precipitously or arbitrarily. We need to analyze the situation with its different aspects and to consider our motivations in order to decide with a pure heart and not in an effort to serve our personal interests. We need to pray for the light of the Holy Spirit and the grace to act in conformity with the will of God, and if necessary, to ask the advice of people who can enlighten us relative to this situation. The Lord does not want us to be self-sufficient, and as part of his pedagogy, he permits that sometimes we find ourselves in the impossibility of finding enlightenment and peace by ourselves. We cannot receive them except through the intermediary of another person to whom we can open up. There is in this opening of the heart relative to questions that we ask ourselves or dilemmas that we try to solve, a disposition of humility and trust which greatly pleases the Lord and frequently renders harmless the traps that the enemy sets there to deceive or trouble us. Regarding interior peace, which is so precious and of which we have spoken so much, we know that at certain moments in our lives we cannot find it by ourselves without the help of someone to whom we can open our souls. St. Alphonsus Liguori.
Can I stop you there for a second?
Please.
Sorry, I
don't
want to interrupt, but so basically, we have to start thinking about what's going to happen, what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
We must.
Yeah.
But we can't be rash in making decisions, especially when they're weighty decisions. It's one thing to make a quick decision about turning right or left out of the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't really matter. But the bigger decisions, the heavier decisions about life, and even just the making plans for what we're going to do, how we're going to live, we can't make those decisions overly quickly. And sometimes it's necessary not just to make those decisions by ourselves, but even to expose those ideas to the wisdom of another, to talk to somebody about that idea. So a married couple, for example, makes decisions together.
Yeah.
And so one spouse has an idea, has something that's on their mind that they want to think about doing, and they bring it to their spouse for the purpose of discussing it and seeing, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea? And as they discuss it, they figure it out. And then obviously the component of prayer, to bring this into prayer. And the real interior peace comes from actually having done those things. The real interior peace comes from having subjected the idea and brought the idea. So, okay, I'm liking that. Now, we might not be there yet, and there might not be an easy to find quote from the book about it, but I'm thinking, like, what do you think happens, or what should we do when the idea is met with resistance, but it's met with resistance from somebody who doesn't necessarily, I don't know, have a vested interest?
Like you come up with an idea and said person has shut it down.
You just kind of share it with somebody, not necessarily the person who should be making the decision.
Yeah.
But you share the idea and then are discouraged by the reaction. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know where I'm going with that, but it's just that was one of the things that popped into my mind.
No, that's an interesting thing because everybody, what I have noticed in my week is like, I mentioned a couple things to certain people, and everybody seems to have an opinion about what's going on in my said life. And then that became super overwhelming because I have a tendency to people please. I never want to say the wrong thing, so I'm very much aware of that, which makes it, okay, well, I need to do this because this person asked me this question, or they said this, or they said that. And what have I not done is I have not brought it to prayer, where is what God, prayer and peace go together.
And you can't take in too many opinions about things, not because opinions aren't valuable, but because if you get overwhelmed and you respond to every opinion with trying to adjust to that particular person's expression, then as you try to adjust to everything, you're going to end up not actually doing what's good, what's necessary. You're going to end up throwing away your idea, your desire, for the sake of making other people happy, and then nothing gets done.
I think another layer to this is, why don't we do the things that, maybe we want to do, is a fear of failure. Like, oh, well, if I'm not going to do it well, why bother?
Yeah.
And so that stops you, that scares you. And like, I don't want to make a mistake, so I'm just not going to do it. Or I don't know about the right way to go about this, so we're not even going to try. And that can cause like another thing of anxiety. And I love this part because Jacques Philippe says this about mistakes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because especially if you have a desire to do God's will, but you're so consumed with, I need to be like reaching this part of perfection and I can't make a mistake, otherwise I'm not doing God's will. He says something totally different, which should really truly give you freedom. And if I have made a mistake and I know that you are able to draw good from it, and I know that you are able to draw good from this error, it would be for me a source of humility, and I will learn something from it. And I remain at peace. For another thing, we would love to be infallible, never to be wrong, but there is a lot of pride in this desire, and there is also the fear of being judged by others. The one, on the contrary, who accepts peacefully the idea of being wrong from time to time and accepts that others know it, manifests true humility and a true love of God. On the other hand, let us not have a false idea of what God requires of us. God is our Father, good and compassionate, who knows the shortcomings of his children, the limitations of our judgment. He asks of us goodwill, the right intentions, but in no way does he demand that we would be infallible and that all of our decisions would be perfect. Exclamation point.
Exclamation point. So, all right. The fear of failure often governs us. We are often afraid of failing and messing up. And I think once we come to that realization that the only way for us to learn sometimes is by messing up, by trying, by doing it. The experience is the best teacher, even if experience is a failed experience. I didn't do this thing well, or I wasn't able to do it, but I learned better how it was supposed to happen. Sometimes we have to accept that failure is a part of life, and the better we do with that, the healthier we are, right? And sometimes we try and we fail, and it's going to be okay. We're going to get through it, and it can be an opportunity for humility, as Father Jacques Philippe says there. It can also be that chance to just recognize I can't do every single thing. Here's another fear, though, that I think comes in. It's not so much a fear of failure as it is a feeling that I'm not able to do that thing. The structures don't exist. It's not possible because I have to do these other things. This is what I'm obligated to, or this is how it works. I think that applies more to me, maybe personally.
That's in the beginning of the book.
Yeah, I think for me that's one that I feel pretty intensely when I started to realize as we went through this exercise about dreams, that if there's any one thing that I think about a lot, that comes to me a lot, it's that there are elements in life as a pastor that I really think should be different. And if I was able to re-envision the way that a pastor is pastor, I would love to. Because I think there are too many things that have kind of gotten attached to the office of pastor. such that it makes it harder and harder for a pastor to be a pastor. Now, that might also just be my own preferences. So one of the tasks of the pastor is to not only take care of the spiritual welfare of his people and of his parish, but also to take care of the temporal goods, to administer the temporal goods of the parish. But I'm not convinced that administration of temporal goods needs to be expressed in the way that we typically express it in the United States of America and according to these different financial policies, right? I think too often the pastor is charged to be the financial manager and to be responsible for all things having to do with fundraising and income for his parish. Except that unless the pastor previously earned an MBA or previously had some kind of experience in finance or in fundraising, that's not the thing that the pastor was trained to do.
Right.
So administration of temporal goods, I'm not sure needs to always apply to the down to the detail financial management. And I've talked about this, and I've been wrestling with this all week because, well, yesterday I had a finance council meeting, and I need to say, first of all, that while the financial side of being a pastor is my personal least favorite thing to deal with, the people who serve on my parish finance council are incredible. And they're incredible because they offer great advice, because they know what they're doing. They're very wise in this area, and because they put up with me not being able to understand certain things that they've explained to me several times.
Yeah.
And they're still very patient with me, and I so appreciate what they do. I need to make sure that that's clear. Even though I don't like doing the financial stuff, they are incredibly helpful and so patient with me and my stupidity. For the record, it's recorded, needs to be said. I've had this conversation. I was talking with it once with a priest, and he was very helpful. He said, well, think of it this way. If you're a spiritual father, what does a father of a family have to do? A father of a family has to be concerned for the temporal needs of his family, right? He has to be concerned for making sure that there's money in the bank, that he's saving money to provide for his family, and that he's taking care of whatever they need in terms of material things for their education, for their food, all that stuff. These are all natural concerns that he has. And so I thought, okay, I'll try to have that attitude as I look at parish finances, that this is me trying to make sure that the needs of my parish family are provided for. As a spiritual father, I want to try to provide for that. But this is where the analogy between spiritual fatherhood and biological fatherhood starts to fall apart a little bit, because a biological father has his family unit and a family budget, and there's a partnership with his wife to help them to manage it, and they can adjust for different things, and they can control certain things. They can work in different ways to ensure that they're going to have what's necessary. But the spiritual father trying to do the same thing for his parish family, for his spiritual family, has, number one, far more children.
Yeah.
So think of the nuclear family and then a parish family. Well, the difference is that a parish family, our parish family, for example, is almost 9,000 people. Right? Almost 9,000 people.
Where are half of them?
Well, that's a huge question, right? And one spiritual father.
Yeah.
So then if we've got that, then that's already by itself just done.
Yeah.
The other part is I have no control over money. I have no actual control because it all depends on generosity and the giving from other people. So I started wrestling with that and going, well, no, it's not the same. Whatever we have, I need to administer well. Whatever is given, I take the stewardship responsibility very seriously. I have to be able to steward it well and be responsible for it. But it's not the same as this other thing. So I start kind of thinking through, well, what would it look like then? And what if people who were actually qualified to do some of these things took care of fundraising, financial management, planning? What if that wasn't the thing that I had to work on? What if the thing that I had to work on was making sure that we were able to maintain things, that we were able to use the things that we have well? So the temporal administration was using the physical plant, the facility, using it well, reminding people of why this is such an important piece to our ministry.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Was this ever like a class in seminary?
No, they don't teach you anything like that.
That doesn't make sense though.
It's for years and years and years, it has been the complaint that we're given so many responsibilities in a temporal context for which we are so ill prepared. And part of the problem is there are some guys who have a natural ability. Now that sounds strange to call it part of the problem. That there are some men who have a natural gift or talent or prior life experience doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I don't mean that it's a problem that they have that. I mean that because there are so many out there who are actually incredibly skilled administrators who understand how to do this in such a way that it's not at all a burden for them. For those of us like me who have no life experience other than being a priest, right? Because I started seminary right out of high school. For those of us who do not have experience running our own business, who did not study finance or accounting, we have to learn on the fly. And we can learn a certain amount, but we're still not professional in this.
Right.
There are other people who are better suited and better qualified. So the dream that I would have would be that there's some way that we could re-envision the way that the temporal administration of parochial goods and church goods and resources is done, that we could find a different way to do it so that a pastor could focus on the things that are, I think, more essential to his ministry.
To not let it take away your joy.
And I don't mean it that the temporal administration thing shouldn't be part of a pastor's responsibility.
Yeah.
I do believe that it makes sense that there has to be in some way there has to be a responsibility for that. But I don't want that to be the main primary focus.
No work is more important than joy.
Yeah. And well, what I find is that I sit down and I do if I have a meeting with the finance council, you can bet that for the next 2 weeks, it will be the thing that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And that it's the thing that I worry about the most coming out of that. The other thing is because it always feels like a referendum. Just like my own weakness, it just always feels like a referendum. If the money isn't quite where it's supposed to be, it makes me think, okay, I messed up. I messed up somehow. Like, well, no, 2 trees came down and we had to have them cleared. That's why we spent that extra money. Yeah, but it's my fault. No, it's not my fault. Okay? The offertory wasn't as high as we would have expected it to be in this quarter or something. And I'm thinking, that's my fault. What did I do?
You should really read this book.
Yeah, I think I need to.
Yeah. You're literally I'm just going to say you just need to read this book.
I will. In that context, though, I'm realizing I'm starting to think through what the dream would be. And now, so I've got to learn how to do this again.
Learn how to dream again.
And so that whole idea, just from our retreat on Saturday, what are your dreams? Well, I don't know if this is a dream or if this is a practical concern, because I think I get too caught up in the practical. But could there be something there? I don't know yet, but I want to think through this a little bit more. I want to talk it through with some people and start to dig into it.
Yeah.
And figure out what's going on, because there's so much that we can do. You know, like the thing I want to do most. I want to do this kind of stuff. I want to teach. I want to talk to people about the faith. That's where I feel like I'm most effective. I feel like I'm least effective when you're asking me to make a comment about a budget spreadsheet. Now that's also because it's the thing that is least attractive to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe I actually have a capacity to be effective in that area. I just don't like it. So which is it? Is it that I'm actually least effective, or that my heart just isn't in that? And sometimes all of us, regardless of our vocation, regardless of our state in life, must do things that we don't like to do. That's part of being a human.
It's part of being an adult.
Very much a part of being an adult, yeah. But if I have to do some things that I don't like to do, then where do I find my capacity to love in all of that?
Yeah.
Because even when I have to do things that I don't want to do or that aren't my favorite activity, the fact of the matter is I can still be an instrument of God's grace and mercy. Even in doing the things that I don't like, I can still bring something to the table that's good.
Yeah. This is such a question that's like, how am I operating in my daily life? And that's something that retreat had made me ask that question too. Like, how am I, Paola, bringing myself into
Paola,
Paola, koala. So many variations of my nombre. How am I operating? What I've been feeling is I feel like I've been operating in a hurried, anxious, trying to keep it together kind of way the last couple of weeks, and I have no idea why I'm feeling like that. And it like sucks. And kind of what you had said, like, oh man, if it wasn't for this, if I didn't have this issue mentally, or if I just was better at my time, or just whatever it is, we always bring it on ourselves. But you also kind of just revealed something, is we internalize it, we start looking at ourselves. And at what point was I looking at the Father?
Right.
And this whole time that I am literally like stressing out and complaining and doing this, and the Father's like, look at me.
Well, it's so easy when we're worried about what we're able to do, what we're capable of, or if we're just not accomplishing. Sure. It's so easy to do it. So in adoration last night, I was just really convicted as I was praying about my dear friends, the community of the Lamb, the little brothers and little sisters of the Lamb, and as mendicants, they really truly rely entirely on the providence of God. And it got me thinking, when do I tell God that I trust him? I talk about trusting God all the time. I tell people to trust God all the time. But when have I told the Lord that I would rely entirely on his providence? And so that became my prayer yesterday, that I want to rely on the providence of God. I want to trust all of this stuff that I'm not capable of dealing with myself, that I don't have the skills for, and that I don't feel comfortable doing. I want to entrust this all to the providence of God. But then that becomes another piece. When have I taught people about the providence of God? When have I led that by that example? And I don't mean that in a critical way, but I mean simply to say, all right, then a piece of all of this needs to be showing people how to rely on that providential care.
Yeah.
And how to confidently speak that truth, that God is going to take care of us. God's the one who's in charge. He's going to watch over us. He's going to give us what's necessary. So let's give it to him.
Yeah.
Let's trust him to actually do that thing.
Yeah. I'm going to agree with that, because that's what the retreat made me realize too, was now I do recognize God's providence in my life. I really do. Like learning how to heal from my father wounds, I do experience the Father's love in my life. But oftentimes, and I looked at my prayer life, I spent a lot of time talking mostly to the Holy Spirit. And I don't spend enough time talking to the Father as much as I should. Not that it's wrong, because when you talk to one, you talk to all. But there is something in that, is that when I talk to the Father, I am being reminded of my daughterhood, of me being a child of God. And what does that mean, and what does that look like? And that's how I'm supposed to be operating in this world. I'm not supposed to be operating in like this place of perfection, which is unattainable. I'm operating in this world as a daughter of a all-knowing, all-loving, all-providing God. And I just want to read this last part from Jacques Philippe, because he calls this the royal way of love.
Ooh.
He says,
oh, I like that phrase.
I know, the royal way of love. All things considered, this manner of going forward based on peace, liberty, confident abandonment to God, quiet acceptance of our shortcomings and even our failures. Why is this the way to counsel? Why is it more correct than seeking the will of God, which is done with preoccupation, scruples, and a tense and restless desire for perfection? Because the only true perfection is that of love. And in the first way of proceeding, there is more true love of God than in the second. Like, whoo! It's love. It is love. And he says this at the end. He says, we will be saints the day when our inabilities and our nothingness will no longer be for us a subject of sadness and anxiety, but a subject of peace and joy. So when you stop operating from a place of it all depends on me, there's no room for a savior. Like once you do that, you've now made room for God to be God in your life. But if I keep operating out of this place of, it all depends on me, I need to be self-sufficient, I need to be independent. Yeah. It's my fault that this didn't happen this way, that way, and that way. And as if you are going to save everything in your life and maintain everything in your life, there's no room for God to act. I mean, there isn't. Like, it's like he's waiting for us to make a way and make room for him to come down and do the saving, do the redeeming, do the restoring, do the miracles. But because of each of us living in this broken world because of sin, like, there's always going to be a temptation to turn inward. And God in his goodness and his fatherhood is so good because he never stops calling us back to himself and to remind us of the relationship that we've been established in him for. But how it's so hard in the daily life. Just because we work in church doesn't mean I think about it all the time. Like it's just super interesting. But I read that part and I was like, oh my goodness. Like, it is good to have a desire for holiness and to do these things and to hit perfect marks. But as soon as I don't do anything the way that I think I'm supposed to be doing, I get so self-critical. I get super anxious. And that's where the enemy feeds off of me. And I just get stuck in a vortex. And what calls me out? Love calls me out. The Father's gentle voice calls me out, reminds me of who I am, and restores joy back in my life. And he knows it's going to happen again. Like, that's why confession is there all the time.
Yeah, we go through the cycle, right? Of here's the thing that I'm dealing with fine. Everything's okay. And then I start to waver, and then I fall. Mm-hmm. And I get back up and I try again. And then I start to waver and fall, get back up, try again. Things are going well. And it's that constant process of growth. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But the royal way of love, I'm sticking with it. I'm praying with it.
Okay.
If I'm a royal child of God, I'm like, what is that? What does that mean?
It's beautiful.
I really like that exercise that Greg had us do. That's when I first started crying. I was like, oh, dang it, we're going to do it here.
I think this might be the one that I missed because I had the wedding.
Oh.
I had to leave the retreat so I could be at a wedding.
This was at the beginning. I think, you might have. Okay. So anyways, he had you.
There's a lot of in and out for me.
There was.
During the retreat. And it still was a big impact. So I'm glad you got to have the whole thing.
Well, I think this is a very good practical thing to, for our tons of listeners. I think it's a really good practical thing that you can do in your own time. One thing that he said was, ever-present God, here with me now. Help me to be here with you. I actually prayed that on my way to work this morning.
Yeah.
Because I was like, why am I feeling like this? And then I just started praying that. And I was like, no, ever-present God, here with me now. Help me to be here with you. So I prayed that in the car. The other exercise he had us do was, you stand in your chair, feet firmly planted on the ground.
You usually sit in a chair.
Oh, sorry. Did I just say that?
Yeah.
Sorry. You sit in your chair, feet.
just to make sure we're using furniture correctly according to its designed purpose.
Yeah. Feet firmly planted.
We're big on believing that all things have a purpose, that there's a reason for things being created the way that they're created. Right?
Exactly.
So, feet on the ground.
So he's kind of leading us through and just centering your breathing, being aware of your body. And then the question he asks is, now reflect on your identity as a son of God, as a daughter of God. But you are the son and daughter of a king. How does royalty sit? And like, that blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because I sat there and I was like, I was kind of slouched and I was like, wait, as royalty, I'm supposed to sit upright. And just being aware of my body and what was happening in my mind as I was praying through that exercise, and what I believed, because my posture revealed about what I believed about God.
That's powerful.
It was, and I started crying and I was like, oh my gosh, I operate out of a place where I don't always believe this. There's parts of me where like, God, I believe you could do this. And there's still a heck of a lot of me that's like, but I don't believe you in this. That's why we have the rest of our life.
So it's that constant process of becoming. Of growing into what it is, the identity that God has given to us.
Yeah.
And growing into the understanding of how we're supposed to then use those gifts. Mm-hmm. But that's where again, coming back to the dreaming.
Yeah.
Because when you can dream yourself as beloved daughter, beloved son, then it gives you some sense of what your capacity is, what your possibilities are. Mm-hmm. But it also reminds you that it's okay to have those dreams And that in fact, it's beautiful to have those dreams, to start thinking about what I might do, what the next chapter of my life might look like, or what the next thing that I might do in this particular time of my life. And how is it that God is asking me, inviting me to do these different things? How is it that he's taking me to that next place?
And you're doing it out of a place of joy,
right?
Out of a place of freedom, and not feeling like I have to do this. No, there are things we have to do, but even still, in all of that, it's because you're not confident in yourself, you're confident in God.
Right on.
Like that's the whole thing that Jesus was trying to teach us. That's why the first word's like our Father, like, and we're sheep, we're dumb. Like we don't know. But this is very good, but this is really real. Like you and I have not arrived.
No, there's so much work to do.
There's so much work
to do.
Yeah.
But I was really excited in the end that there was this opportunity to actually confront that need to actually dream about things, to look ahead, and to recognize that the possibility of wanting to do something or wanting something, it's not bad. And in fact, it's an important component in living out who God has made me to be, who God's called me to be. And so it's fun. I'm looking forward to this. I don't think I've really started the dream yet, but I'll get there.
Started the work.
Yeah.
Started the work towards dreaming.
Yeah. It's a strange idea to think of like, well, I have to lay the groundwork in order to dream, but actually that's how dreams work. You lay the groundwork to dream by going to bed.
You stop
like
doing.
actual dreams, right?
Yeah.
I have to actually go to bed. I have to actually fall asleep. So the groundwork, I have to make it possible for me to fall asleep. Once I've fallen asleep, then I can dream.
Isn't that interesting how falling asleep is shutting off and stop doing everything?
Yep. Isn't that half of prayer? More than half of prayer? Most of prayer?
You mean
sit
half
down,
of prayer is sleeping?
Shut up. Stop talking.
Yes.
Let God tell you.
Yeah. But we want to be in control of everything.
I just so love control.
Me too. But it comes from a deep place of woundedness.
You don't say.
Yeah, that's what the questionnaire revealed to me, which I kind of knew, but all it did was just brought certainty to that.
Well, we're not trying to poke the wounds in this podcast. We're just trying to talk
but no,
about the dreams.
it is very good. Yeah. Just where do we need to stop and let ourselves be held in the arms of the Father?
Amen.
Where we actually do fall asleep. And then we actually can dream because we are safe.
Right on.
That's the image that's coming up for me is I just need to be held and let myself be held. But, as all parents know, toddlers do not like to be held, even though you know exactly what they need is a nice nap, but then they fight you on the nap, and that's what we're doing.
Until they fall asleep, though.
Yeah, so God's holding us until we finally give in.
Yep. For Like the Lamb, I'm Father Sam Kachuba.
I'm Paola Pena. Sorry, Paola.